Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 966, 966, November the 23rd, 2019, Saturday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the news of the day. So I guess everyone by now has read the story about CNN doing this story about Horowitz issuing a criminal referral to John Durham on this, what they call a line lawyer, FBI lawyer. We now know, of course, his name is Kevin Kleinsmith. Kevin Kleinsmith was fired from the Mueller team for his anti-Trump messages. He has been criminally referred to Durham for altering an email, and this would be in regards or related to the Carter Page FISA application. And of course we know that Kleinsmith worked under Peter's been stroking us. Kleinsmith was also the one who messaged out Viva la Resistance to his FBI lover. That's right, he was also having an extramarital affair, just like his boss, with another FBI lawyer. And of course she also hated Trump. So you had Peter's been stroking us, having an extramarital affair with Loose Lisa Page. You had Kevin Kleinsmith having an extramarital affair with another FBI female, we assume female, lawyer. So I guess they were having a lot of fun up there while they were plotting the coup against Trump with their shenanigans. It shows what a bunch of bad apples. This is what you call bad apples. These are bad people. They can't be trusted even in their own marriages. Yet somehow we decided to give these people all this authority, and look what they did with it. They effed it up, just like they did with their marriages. These are bad people. Now, what is all this about? Well, clearly, since all the people named in the Horowitz report had an opportunity to sit down and look at what's in the report about them, this is them getting out ahead of things, probably on the advice of some PR firm, to do damage control. Because if you read further into the Washington Post story, which also kind of piggybacks onto the CNN story, they go out of their way to keep pointing out it's just a low-level FBI guy. He was Strzok was his boss, but you know Strzok's not implicated here. And so clearly this story originally broke on CNN. Now we know that there are 4 former Obama administration officials who are part of the deep state coup who are now contributors to CNN. They work for CNN. So I assume it was one of those 4, because otherwise, if it would have been someone just outside of CNN, one of these other people, they wouldn't have gone to CNN. I mean, they don't even get 1 million views on any of their shows. They would have went to the New York Times or the Washington Post or maybe Wall Street Journal. But CNN wouldn't have been high on their list. So you can be pretty sure that this information came from one of those 4 people who used to work in the Obama administration for the FBI, the DOJ, or the CIA, or somebody. Of course, you got McCabe is one of those people. You got this former CIA analyst. She was one of those people. So it was one of those 4 people over there at CNN that leaked this. And of course, it's an attempt to get out of the story and to do a little damage control at the end of the week. So, you know, I wouldn't read too much into this as far as on the larger, the big picture of what this is all about. You know, obviously it's an effort to minimize the fallout. But let's take a look at it from the perspective of Kevin Kleinsmith, and I don't believe that Kleinsmith would have been the one to put this out. I think this would have come from, you know, McCabe or one of the other 3 who provided that information to their employer, CNN, to do damage control for themselves. So Kleinsmith, though, Kleinsmith is the one who now has been targeted. He's been given the criminal referral. To say that he's the only one, I think, is naive. I think there will be others who will be given criminal referrals. Already have, I'm sure, have been made criminal referrals too. So this is not. I think that the point here was for CNN to try to make it look like, oh, the Horowitz report's coming out, and this is the big bombshell. Kevin Kleinsmith, this FBI line lawyer, not a top-tier player. Oh, they're all good. Comey, McCabe, Peter's been stroking us. Oh, they're all good. They're all great. It's just this one guy, this line-level lawyer. Now, this is the narrative that they want to try to pitch. But no, I'm pretty sure that the whole Horowitz report is going to outline a lot of criminality on the part of many more people and those at the tippy top, because they were the ones running the show. So that having been said, let's focus on what's going to happen now with Kleinsmith, because what's going to happen now with Kleinsmith is that Durham, who's now got the criminal referral, is going to contact Kleinsmith's lawyer, and or Kleinsmith's lawyer is going to contact Durham, one of the two. Kleinsmith is going to be looking for, because what he did is pretty serious. He doctored a document that was used to get a FISA, not just a search warrant or any basic type of search warrant, or your average search warrant, a FISA warrant. These are the most devastating warrants you can have on you, because they give the government everything. They can look at everything. They can do everything. Informants, spies, you name it. It gives them carte blanche to go after you. So these are very powerful warrants. And lying to a FISA court is pretty serious, especially if you're an FBI official. So obviously this dude is facing some serious issues. Now, most likely he's already lawyered up, and his lawyer is going to say, well, the best thing we can do, because you are in some significant trouble here, is we can agree to cooperate. And that's likely what he's going to do. Or it will be Durham who will contact his attorney or send him the target letter and let him know that he's now been targeted for this investigation. And that generally includes an offer to the attorney that if the attorney would like to make arrangements to have conversation about cooperation, that's certainly something that's can be done. So one way or another, there's going to be a meeting, I would think, unless Kleinsmith goes the other way. But I would think he's probably going to sit down with his attorney, with Durham, and answer questions. And what kind of questions are those going to be? Well, they're going to be questions like, okay, Mr. Kleinsmith, did your boss, Peter's been stroking us, know that you doctored the document? Did Mary Moyer know that you doctored that? Did James Comey know you doctored that? Did Lisa Page know you doctored that? Did McCabe know that you doctored that? Who else knew? Who was part of that? And questions like that. In other words, he's going to give Kleinsmith the option of giving up some people to get a more lenient sentence or get off completely, depending on how big of a fish and how many fish he can give up. So it looks like Kevin Kleinsmith is the first person we know about. Now, there may be others we don't know about, but he is certainly the first one that we can now be pretty sure is going to sit down with Durham and probably be asked to give up his collaborators, his fellow conspirators. And most of the time, when people are faced with that, they do. So we will see if Kleinsmith keeps his mouth shut and takes the rap and doesn't rat out his friends, or if he sings like a bird. Quite honestly, there's so many people that Durham gets a crack at that he's eventually going to find somebody, and I don't think it'll take him too long. Will it be Mr. Kleinsmith, or will it be somebody else? I don't know. I do know it will be somebody else. If not Kleinsmith, someone else, especially because we don't know the extent of the charges that Kleinsmith is facing. We haven't seen, Durham hasn't filed any charges yet. But I'm sure when he sits down with Kleinsmith and takes a look at all the violations that occurred in that act, they're going to be pretty damaging, pretty severe. And I think that that's usually what gets people to cooperate. So I would think that that's what we can expect to happen with Kleinsmith. He's going to be sitting down with Durham, and he's going to be given the opportunity to provide information, cooperate, or he's going to keep his mouth shut and probably get a pretty hefty sentence. Unlike a lot of the other people during the Mueller investigation who got caught, lying under oath or failing the memory test and spending 2 weeks in jail or 30 days in jail or something like that, Mr. Kleinsmith's actually looking at real time and real fines. And it's certainly the end of his career as a lawyer. He will be disbarred. So President Trump did an interview on Fox News yesterday morning, an hour-long interview. I listened to most of it. And, of course, he's now saying that he wants the impeachment trial in the Senate and that he says it will destroy the Democrats. And he's absolutely correct. Trump also says that the FISA report by Horowitz will show the Democratic Party spying on Trump during the 2016 election. That's an interesting choice of words. Now, with Trump, you have to be careful. I mean, he's not a lawyer. And just the way he talks sometimes, you can't take everything specifically what he says, and try to analyze it, because his use of the language sometimes is it's unique to himself, the way he does things. So when he says the Democratic Party spied on him, we can look at that one of two ways. We can either think, okay, well, what he means is the Democrats, they were running an October surprise on him, and then they paid for an FBI investigation, blah, 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 blah. You can think about it like that. Or you could think about it like, wait a minute, you mean the FBI, the Democratic Party was actually working in concert with the FBI? Now that's a whole different picture right there. That would be suggesting that there was collaboration between the Democratic Party. Now we know that they were working essentially on the same track, but whether or not there was an actual coordinated effort between the DNC and the FBI, that is something completely different. And while there's a lot of evidence that that's certainly likely, it's still not quite nailed down. Of course, we know the Right Reverend Clinton was using her people from her campaign and her friends and her lawyers to feed and pump information into the FBI. But that was working through a third party, and this is why the Right Reverend Clinton does it this way. She's very slick. And so actually tying her to that is going to be a little tougher. But, you get the right witness with the right information, or you stumble across the right, cell phone conversation, or you get the right email, and that could certainly be proven true. So that's a little bit dicey there. I think it's just the words he chose to use there to say that the Democratic Party was spying on him. Yeah, they were, but, the Democratic Party doesn't get FISA warrants. The Democratic Party doesn't do confidential informants. The Democratic Party doesn't have FBI field agents setting people up. That's the FBI. Okay, so we kind of have to look at those as separate things right now, the FBI and the Clinton campaign. But I do believe that at some point there will be some evidence that will link the two. We already have some evidence, but I mean the actual smoking gun, the actual document or cell phone conversation or email or something where they're actually discussing their cooperation with one another to target Trump. Right now, I don't know that we have that evidence. I haven't seen it, but we know that Clinton's lawyer, Mr. Sussman, was going to FBI Counsel Baker and giving him information. We know that Chalupa was rubbing shoulders with Ukrainians over there, and she was also talking to the ambassador in Washington, where we know the FBI had set up a office to also work and coordinate with Ukrainians. See, so it's blurry. It's very blurry. It's there, but it's blurry. And in a court of law, we all know it's probably true, but in court you actually have to be able to provide evidence, and that's where I'm coming from here. So I think they'll get there. I think they will get there. Not that you can't do that in court, because it's certainly done all the time. But prosecutors would much rather have the hard evidence as opposed to trying to convince a jury that it sure looks like this happened. We don't have the actual smoking gun, but it sure looks like it. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence that would certainly lead us all to believe that it was very possible, it was probable, it was very likely. But generally prosecutors don't like to use that tact. They usually don't. And but again, I do think eventually the evidence is going to be discovered or pulled out of somebody that there will at some point, this will be the most explosive thing that comes out of Spygate, will be when they actually can tie the Clinton campaign and the Right Reverend Clinton to knowingly, not just knowingly, but actively working with the FBI, the CIA, whoever was involved in all these plots. Because right now they're kind of separate entities. You got the government over here and the Clinton campaign over here. But as soon as the evidence comes out that fuses them together, whether it's an email, a phone call, a witness testimony, whatever it is, that is when the bomb goes off right there. That's the game changer. And that's what I've been looking for and continue to look for every day as I work on this story. Trump also said that this is going to be the biggest scandal in the history of the country. He also said that the Durham investigation will implicate Obama. And the Durham investigation will come out shortly after the IG report. Now that's interesting because, you would think it would take some time to go through such a massive conspiracy. I mean, Horowitz has been worked on his thing for 2 years. He had a year and a half, year and 3 month head start on Durham. And Durham's got a lot more to look at. A lot more. So if Durham's stuff comes out or his investigation concludes shortly, as Trump says here, shortly after the IG report comes out, man, that would be quick work by Mr. Durham. I expect he would finish before the general election in 2020, but that would, I'm thinking maybe late spring, early summer of 2020 is about probably where I would put the Durham investigation wrapping up, or at least ways the investigation part of it wrapping up, and from that point it'll go on for probably 2-3 years after that with all the indictments, charges, court hearings, and things and such before it's all finally put to rest. Take a while to wind it down. But that's an interesting comment from Trump, and of course it's also when he says that it will go all the way to Obama. We've heard him say that before, but I think what's sticking in my mind here is that we know that Barr had that unplanned meeting with Trump back about a week and a half ago, and we never did really find out because everybody's been very tight-lipped about exactly what was discussed, but we know it was important enough that Trump was 45 minutes late getting to the rally that night in Louisiana because Barr had something important enough to tell him that after Barr told him it was so important that Trump delayed himself even longer by having a second meeting with his communications people shortly afterward. His lawyer, his White House counsel, and his 2 communications people he brought in after Barr left. So I think that probably my best guess is that Barr probably came to Trump that day and said, hey, just want to let you know the Horowitz report is going to come out. It's very damning. We're doing criminal referrals over to Mr. Durham. He probably gave him some other information. He might have even told him, hey, you might want to prepare yourself, Mr. President, because my U.S. Attorney, Mr. Durham, is presenting evidence to me in our conversations that it looks like that this entire thing that was going on in 2016, 2017 likely went all the way up to the very top, to the President Obama himself, and that things are looking very bleak for a lot of people, and this is going to be a very difficult thing to work through because you're talking about the previous president and many high-level officials, and it's something that's it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and I think it probably had something to do with that. I think the conversation was something very, very important, and that's what I would guess. It's just my guess. Lindsey Graham is preparing for the Senate trial for impeachment. He says that there will not be any, he's going to use the standard rules that they use in a sort of a legal proceeding, which he says that there'll be no hearsay evidence. Well, if there's no hearsay evidence allowed, then that means that about 95% of the witnesses that were called in the last 2 weeks by the bug-eyed fool will not be able to testify. There was only, I think, 2 of those individuals, the ambassador Sunderman and the other dude with the glasses, dark hair, those Morrison. I think those are the only two that actually had direct conversation with the president about the issue. All the other people we heard from were all second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand, things like that. There was only two, and both of them, Morrison's testimony was flat out supportive of Trump and damaging to the Schiff effort, and Sundman really got pretty much destroyed and looks like kind of a cracker, kind of a wacko. And his testimony wasn't damaging to Trump. In fact, he had to admit, Ratcliffe got him to admit that, in fact, he didn't know anything. Trump never told him anything other than, hey, there's no quid pro quo. I just want the Ukraine PM to do what he said he was going to do, to deal with that corruption. That's basically it. So if you look at it that way, once the trial happens in the Senate, if you can't have hearsay witnesses, well, that's most of the witnesses Schiff had. 95% of them. Also, Lindsey Graham says that he plans on calling the whistleblower. He plans on calling the Bidens, as well as probably Chalupa and some other people into those hearings. And so, yeah, if that happens, and again, with Lindsey Graham, you never know. You have to kind of wait and see. But if that actually happens, that will cause a complete boomerang effect, and it will actually end up exonerating Trump and probably leading to prosecution of Biden and his son because of what will come out in those hearings. The DOJ will have no choice but to launch a criminal investigation. They're already looking into it, but if you expose this stuff in a Senate hearing, there'll be criminal referrals immediately, and they'll likely go to Durham or someone in the DOJ. I mean, again, having this thing go to the Senate is going to be a disaster either way. So we will see how Schiff and Pelosi play it from this point forward. I would be, and I'll tell you another thing. I think if they, based on what I'm seeing, if they have the vote, the actual full House impeachment vote, to send it to the Judiciary Committee so they can begin the actual impeachment hearing in the House, I don't know if they got the votes. After what we've seen the past 2 weeks, there's 50 some odd Democrats that if they sign on to that, they're almost certainly going to lose their seats, and that gives the House back to the Republicans. Republicans only need 21 or 22 seats to flip the House. So this is it was a huge mistake in the first place to do this, and I think it's going to boomerang very, very badly for the Democrats, and I would not be surprised because of what they see happening in the Senate that they come up with some sort of a way to either not move forward or to rig it so that they come up just a few votes short of getting the votes they need to move into a full impeachment hearing. I think that may be what they're talking about right now, is how do we get ourselves out of this thing and stop it from going to the Senate, where we're certainly going to be exposed. Lindsey Graham has also requested from Pompeo, the Secretary of State, the full transcripts of 3 of the phone calls between Joe Biden and the former Ukrainian Prime Minister Poroshenko. The calls were made right around the time that Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor looking into Burisma and Hunter Biden's activities, at the same time that he was fired. And I'm not, and even if this thing doesn't go to the impeachment hearings to the Senate, that doesn't mean that Lindsey Graham, he doesn't need an impeachment trial to look into this. He's the Senate Judiciary head. He can call Biden and the whistleblower on his own behalf, even without an impeachment hearing. He doesn't need that. So we'll see what he does. Again, with Lindsey Graham, you have to wait and see. It's being reported that John Durham has traveled to Italy for the 3rd time, and they're reporting that this was done last week. And I think I got this out of the Citizen Free Press, which typically cites AP stories, Gateway Pundit stories, and things like that. So The Italian newspaper that I talked about yesterday, the Atlantico, was reporting that Durham was going to make his third visit in the beginning of December. But this story, and I had to read it twice just to make sure that what I was reading was correct, and it's exactly what it says. It says that Durham traveled to Italy for the third time last week. So the Atlantico says that Durham was going to come for the third time in the first week of December, but this story is saying that Durham already did travel to Italy for the third time, and it was last week. And the original story, the first story that we covered a couple of days ago, said that he was coming specifically to talk to Mifsud. Well, I guess many of you have also heard this. Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader in the House, Republican minority leader, has sent a letter to the Bug-Eyed Fool, and he's telling Schiff that according to House Rule 11, Clause 2-1, that rule allows the minority party to have 1 day to call witnesses. And of course, this is something that was probably supposed to be taken out, but was not. So it looks like they found a little niche here, and now it looks like they're going to exploit it. And again, we're talking about the Bug-Eyed Fool. He can just make up a new rule and say, well, we've decided we're not going to do that, so no, I'm not going to let you do it. Which, of course, the Republicans will get a lot of play out of it, but they won't get to get their witnesses. But again, their witnesses can be brought into the Senate Judiciary Committee or one of the other committees where Republican Ron Johnson's committee could do it. So there's a couple committees in the Senate that could actually bring in the whistleblower, Biden's and other people. They have an oversight committee as well. So we'll see about that. But yeah, this rule apparently does, if you read it, and I read it, you can see it on Conservative Treehouse and some other places, does specifically state this rule of the House says that the minority party does get to call, they get 1 day to call witnesses that they want, and as long as they submit the names before the end of the hearings. So that puts, and of course I understand they've sent that list to Schiff, and of course Hunter Biden is on that list, as well as the whistleblower, and Alexandria Chalupa. Now, that kind of puts Schiff in a tough position. I guess there's a couple things he could do. I don't think he's going to allow them to have their witnesses. I don't think that's something he's going to do. So he could either just say, okay, well, I'm going to make up a new rule that rule doesn't apply. Now, he could do that, and he likely would. Or he could just say, okay, well, the hearings are over. There are no more hearings. The hearings are over. That's it. We're going to move on to putting together our case and moving it over to the Judiciary Committee. So I'm sure, I doubt seriously if Schiff is going to allow those witnesses to happen. I think he'll use some parliamentary trick to try to avoid that at all cost. Of course, many of you, maybe there's not a lot of focus right now for some reason on what's going on in Iran. I've been watching it now for 4 or 5 days. Actually 6 days it's been going on. It's not getting a lot of press coverage here in the States. I'm not really sure why. Maybe because of all the other things going on. But the situation in Iran continues to spiral out of control. Of the various uprisings that we've seen over the past half a dozen years or so, this one is appearing to be the worst. And of course, we have at this point, it's being reported 118 people killed. They're shooting these people now. Of course, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard are now shooting the protesters. And the National Security Chief has threatened every protester will be identified and will pay for their actions. I understand they've already arrested like 65 people, and they also I'm hearing that of the people who were killed, the 118 reported dead, the Iranian government is not allowing the relatives of the deceased people to be returned to them until they pay a $4,000 fine. So things are getting really out of control over in Iran. The mullahs have always been able to put these down, but usually when the shooting starts, the protesters go away. But this time it appears to be different. This time it appears they are not going away. Maybe we've reached that point in Iran where they are willing to pay the ultimate price to take down that regime. And it's going to be very, very tempting for Trump and other world leaders not to get involved. It'll be very, very difficult. It's hard. It's hard to stand by and watch this happen and not get involved. But it's also one hell of a piece of quicksand to jump into. There's a lot of potential drawbacks. With jumping into this thing, you almost have to sit back and watch it happen, and it's not going to be pretty. But I imagine that's probably being discussed at the highest levels right now with Trump about what to do. We know Trump doesn't want to get involved at this point, but he would love to take down the regime. It's going to be a very, very tricky situation to deal with, and I think that they're probably not there yet where they would consider bringing in a military force, but they may set some conditions and say, okay, well, if this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, then we may move to come in the last act of the play and give them the little push that they need to topple the regime. I think what they would need is some very high-level officials currently in Iran and the regime to turn. And if they could get something like that going on, then they might be able to use these people. But I don't see a large military invasion force coming in or anything like that. I think it's going to have to happen internally, and that means you usually have to get some very high-level people to turn. And we will continue to watch this situation in Iran, and certainly wish them all the best. It's a very, very tough deal, but as I said about 3 or 4 days ago, this is what happens when you allow the government to disarm you. Support for impeachment has fallen off a cliff. It is down 6 points, with independents in just the last 2 weeks. That's the most crucial voting bloc, especially coming up within a year of an election. When you start losing independents, that's who decides the election. And now, just in the last 2 weeks since the impeachment hearings, the Inquisition, independents have moved 6 points in the direction of the president and away from impeachment. In the rumor mill, on Twitter, all over Twitter today, I'm sure many of you saw this as well. In the rumor mill on Twitter is that Stefan Halper, was Mifsud's handler. That would make a lot of sense. Halper was Mifsud's handler. And the only question then is, who was Halper working for? The IG report, supposedly, in the Twitter Unisphere, is saying that the IG report is going to reveal that Mifsud was not a Russian agent, but that he was working for the FBI under Halper. But Halper is typically associated with the CIA intelligence. So we'll have to see how much truth is in that. It sure makes sense. Of course, we had these climate change freaks who decided to stage a sit-in in Madame Botox, Nancy Pelosi's office a couple of days ago, 2-3 days ago. They hung out there for a day and a half, I think, demanding to see Pelosi, and instead Pelosi just had them arrested. The Blaze is reporting that the fake whistleblower, Sharamilla, was friends with this Schiff staffer, his name Sean Misko, and that Sharamilla and Misko worked together in the Obama White House. And I guess, let's see, we have Jeff Sessions, on a more humorous note, says that he supports the Barr investigation into the Russia probe origins, all of which happened because Sessions had no backbone and got steamrolled by Rodenstein and McCabe. Thanks, Jeff. A little late to the party, don't you think? Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.